Hello and welcome to the Womxn Show. I'm Lenina Rasool and today we are speaking about dance and psychology. Now I know it sounds weird, what does dance have to do with psychology? But after the break we are speaking to Simone Momplé, who is the founder and director of GODANCetm, an organization that uses dance for self-expression and wellness. But before we go into that conversation, we are going to have a look at a short video that introduces GODANCetm and the topic. Let's have a look.
When we move, a lot of different things happen with ourselves within our bodies. And a lot of times people are quite afraid to move, or they don't want to move. They're scared of something. I am Simone Momplé and I am the director and founder of GODANCetm. GODANCetm is a dance wellness company that focuses on using dance or movement as a tool for self-expression. What we do at GODANCetm is we offer dance workshops and dance wellness programs where we allow people to have the space, a comfortable space, to explore themselves through dance and movement. At our dance workshops, you are offered a fun and safe space for you to explore yourself through dance. What we do is we give you the space to find your groove, find out the way that you naturally move. And then we teach a piece of choreography. And you get to put that choreography on top of the way that you naturally move. When you're dancing and moving, all of that is coming from you. And you also get to do that with a fun group of people, and you will definitely walk out of there feeling like you've gained something for yourself. Our dance wellness program is called Moving Through Dance. Moving Through Dance is a specialized dance program that has been developed through using research in dance and psychology. Moving Through Dance focuses on building confidence, self-esteem, and improving overall wellness. Now, this is a 7-session dance program, and in those 7 sessions, we focus on different aspects of dance to allow different psychological processes to happen within the person so that they can explore and experience different parts of themselves. We do dance fitness, dance choreography, we do movement of different body parts, where you get to experience how to dance just with your head and shoulders, for example. You can come and not know anything about dance and never ever have danced in your life before, and you will walk out of there feeling maybe confident, maybe your self-esteem has been improved, or maybe there's just things that have come to your consciousness that you realize I actually haven't dealt with. Now, I know you want to know more about what we do and what we have done at GODANCetm, but there's only so much we can say with words. We are a dance movement company after all. Please go and check us out on all our social media platforms. GODANCeTm. We are on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. You can also contact us on Simone Momplé at godance.co.za. Thank you.
That was a short video on using dance as a form of self-expression. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching the Womxn Show, and we are speaking about dance and psychology and self-esteem. And if it sounds tricky, it's fine, because that's why we're going to be talking about it. And joining me in studio, I'm very excited to have Simone Momplé, who is the director and founder of GODANCetm, that uses dance for self-expression and wellness. She's a dancer, she's a filmmaker, and she's done a master's degree in dance and psychology, which is the first kind of research in South Africa. Simone, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much, Lenina. Great to be here.
So Simone, as I've told you, I've been following your work for a while. I'm so excited. We're speaking about dance and psychology. So I wanted to just come in and speak about the research you've done first, because it's so new, because people don't think about dance and psychology in the same sentence or sphere or anything. Tell us about the research.
Okay, great. So I think I came about the research because I was always a dancer. I feel like I was dancing in the womb already. And I've always had a passion for dance and movement. And I've also then developed an interest in psychology, which wasn't
actually my initial degree. I studied tourism as a first degree, and then I traveled the world, and I was an air hostess for about 3 years, which was my dream job. And then when I came back, I felt like I needed to explore something else further. I needed to study further, and psychology was always that thing that I needed to do. It was just this passion inside of me. I had a deep interest in other people, and so I then went and studied psychology further through UNISA, and then eventually went through to my master's. And so at that point, just before I did my master's, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do with psychology. And because I was dancing in different spaces, I was a Zumba instructor, fitness instructor at different gyms all over South Africa. And I was also doing dance professionally in a competition spaces. And what I found was, as I was observing people, with having studied psychology, I'm now observing the people, and I'm finding that there's something here that needs to be explored, because some people will apologize for themselves to me before they enter the dance studio, and they'll say, I'm so sorry, I can't dance, I'm just going to be at the back, don't worry about me. And I always found it very interesting, because you're not going to be tested here. And then the other part of it was in the dance space, the competition space, there was also identity issues there and self-esteem issues as well. These dancers found that for themselves, they had to question a lot of, can I do this? Am I capable? Even though they've got the skill for it. So because of those dynamics, I found this was interesting. Dance needed to be studied in a psychological way, and psychology needed dance, because psychology has been focused around the person internally and what's happening, and there's a lot of issues about talk therapy that happens, but what about using your body to explore yourself a little bit differently? So that is where I found, okay, dance and psychology has to meet. And I remember going into an interview for my master's, and I said to the panel, very intimidating, but I said to the panel, I don't care if you take me or not. All I know is I'm doing dance and research on dance and psychology with your institution or somewhere else. So take me or not. And I found that very interesting for me, because I now knew that this is what I wanted to study. And so doing my master's was very interesting as well. My research focused on the self-concept. And the reason I wanted to do self-concept is because breaking self-concept down is breaking it into self-esteem, which is how we feel about ourselves, your self-image, which is how you view yourself, and then your ideal self, which is your future self. Like, where do you see yourself in the future, or what person do you envision you to become in the future? So with all of that together, I found that when I used dance in that space to explore all of those concepts, I will then be able to understand how people see themselves, feel about themselves, see their future selves, and does dance have an effect in that space? Can I change the way you think about yourself? Not can I, but can dance change the way you think about yourself, the way you feel about yourself, the way you see yourself, even physically? And so the nice thing about the research is that it was open to whether there was an effect or not. And if there wasn't an effect, that was also okay. That was also a finding, because we are interested in using your body as movement. And if you were moving and you found that actually I like the way I see myself, I like the way I feel about myself, then that just confirm that that you are on the right path, kind of thing. I don't know if you want me to tap into the findings at this point, or if you'd like, that was just the intro into why I studied dance and psychology.
I really love that. I didn't want to come in actually and follow with what you found, because just everything you said about what you found about people apologizing for themselves, about having low self-esteem or identity issues when even at dance competitions, even at that level, because we can assume that somebody who's at competition level is good and that has the skill and should have a certain amount of confidence, even though it's a risk and they're going up against other people. So what did you find? And so I think I'm more interested in that. You must have then ideas around, what does this low self-esteem look like, feel like? What did you find? What issues did you find that people hold around their self-concept? What were the major issues?
So, I mean, this is very tricky to identify for me as an outsider, because I can assume that because of your behavior, or your actions or the what you do, I can assume that you might not like yourself, or you might not feel so confident about yourself. But so this is why, if I studied it in a research way, I could actually tap into how do you really see yourself, because I can't be assuming that because you're sitting like this the whole time that you're not confident, or maybe you're just cold, you know. So it's difficult to assume it. So this is why I just observed it for a while, and what was interesting to me is, like, in the space of the dance fitness, these were professional people in their own professional spaces. They were well off because they were attending a gym that, you know, needs a lot of money to pay for. So you can make that assumption that they are fairly well off financially, career-wise. They are doing really well for themselves. But then putting them into a space where you have to physically show yourself. You have to move, and you only have this. It's very intimidating, and you have to be confident. You have to have some level of confidence. You have to have some level of, I don't care about what people think of me, or you have to have just some desire to dance and move. And yet they were still apologizing. They were still nervous. They were still scared, and they were still really afraid to be in that space, and maybe even intimidated by me as an instructor, because I'm supposed to know what I'm doing, and I know dance. But the more I was in that space, I think I started understanding that dance seems to be so intimidating, but it actually just comes from you. So are we not then feeling intimidated by ourselves? And that was like a whoa realization for me, because if if I cannot give you dance, I can teach you different moves. I can teach you a move on how to, you know, point your toes and turn and do some break dancing, for example. But the way that you do those dance moves, the way that you express yourself, is completely up to you. I can teach it to you, and you can just not do it as well. But dance does not come from the outside. It comes from you. You have to actually do it and execute it. Of course, I think the issue for me came around, people had an idea of dance is supposed to look this way. So if you teach me something, I'm immediately supposed to get it. I must know how my arms are supposed to move. And that's obviously not true, because with everything we learn from scratch. We learn from zero, and we build ourselves up. So why is dance different? So dance doesn't have to look a certain way, which is another thing that I learned. And I think bringing it back to, like, why the self concept, why did I find it so interesting? Because the way that we see ourselves, the way that we feel about ourselves, determines how we operate in the world. It determines what we're actually going to execute and do out there. So these people might be in a professional space, and they might be, you know, fairly sure of themselves financially, but there are some self-esteem issues that they might have about whether they are even capable to do the work that they're doing. Imposter syndrome can come up, or even just the way someone has said something to you before might have an effect on the way that you operate. So I found that because dance levels the playing field for everyone, whether you're professional or not, we are all on the same level when we are in a dance studio, in a dance space. And even me as an instructor, I'm on the same level as you. Because if I ask someone else to teach me something, I might not be able to do it. And that's okay. Like, it needs to be okay. That dance is not something that has to look a certain way. It has to be executed a certain way, depending on the space that you're in. Of course, if you're going to competitions, there's a different story. But I was just talking about it in, like, how do we feel about ourselves, and how does that translate into every other area in our lives? So that was where the interest came in. And while I was doing my research, I was in a space of a university as well. So university students are also very vulnerable when it comes to self-esteem, because you've been plucked out of a safe space of high school into a open field in university, and all your issues are going to come up when you get there, especially the ones that you've let go of, or you've just pushed behind. Any trauma is going to come up for you. Your childhood issues are going to come up. it's a scary space for you to maneuver. And then of course you still have your lecturers pointing at you and saying you need to speak academic, you need to do these things academically, and you don't even know what that means. You need to know a lot about the world when you get there, but you need to know more about yourself. And so I found that working with university students and building their self-esteem or exploring their self-esteem was more interesting to me, because then that would translate into their work as well, and how they study, how they do their orals and that type of thing. So that's where, yeah, the findings for me was interesting.
I mean, that does sound very interesting. You said a few things that really resonated. I want to just jump on one thing. When we talk about imposter syndrome and we talk about self-esteem and we talk about being self-conscious, you said something like, everybody has to start from the bottom, and dances are something that you learn. And, before we start this interview, I was saying, my disclaimer, I'm someone who doesn't dance, but it's not a choice. It's just like, I don't think I can. So when you said, oh, what do you do with your arms? That's my thing. So like, I just don't know what to do with it. But what it sparked now was a thought that when we think about, I think when people are self-conscious, there's a perception, and for me that this was a strong perception. There are some things that you are just supposed to be able to do. So I would be like, how do other people just know how to do it? Or do you, I'll tell you one of the things people said to me, like, so I'm a writer, and I've learned to accept this, but people say I would dance to words and not the music. And so I would be out of rhythm. Oh God, I'm feeling a bit like, embarrassed now saying all these things. But this is the historical thing. Some people said comments to me. And so I wanted to ask, like, when we talk about self-esteem, I think, and we talk about this imposter syndrome, or we talk, and not just in dance, I think across certain things, because we're talking about also when you enter the academic space. And I think there's friction a lot, especially for people who are persons who are the first person, who have no context for academia, who's the first person to go to college, and doesn't understand a lot of those words, doesn't understand how you do the oral. I'm just going to say, I love the story. Shonda Rhimes, who was the producer of Grey's Anatomy and Bridgerton, and in a book, which is called The Year of Yes, she writes, when she first produced Grey's Anatomy, she didn't know anything about production, and it became a strength because she pushed harder and she just asked for things. She didn't know that that's not how it's done. And so years later, maybe a decade or so later, she feels more sort of bound by the rules because she knows what they are. But when we start out, I think from an optimistic space, we just sort of go for it. And so that could be me in writing, but with dance, for instance, there seem to be these unknown and unwritten rules that I just didn't know. And so my answer to that was to just not dance ever, right? Just stay away from it. Just act sick when everybody's going to the dance floor, or whatever kinds of distractions and coping mechanisms that came up. And so just to ask then, because you're marrying the psychology and the dance, is there something there about, is there something there where people think we're expected to be perfect in some way?
You've tapped into a lot of things there. So yes, that's very good point. I think around dance is supposed to look a certain way. I think that was when. So I think I'm leaving out my personal journey with dance as well. I think let me bring it into the space now, because what I do has a lot to do with what I've experienced for myself. Growing up, I was in high school, from creche, I'm not gonna lie. I was always dancing, always on the stage. I loved expressing myself, singing. I don't even know if I could sing properly, but I sing. I used to dance. I used to perform. I used to love doing that. And at high school, I started the dance society at my school. And because there was a breakdancing society, but I felt like not all of us want to break dance specifically. Like I don't want bruises, so I just want to dance. I just want to move. So I started the dance society there. I was also in and out of different studios as well. And with that experience for me was being in a dance studio and having the instructors telling you, okay, we're going to be learning modern dance. Like it's a genre. I'm going to learn modern dance, and modern dance has these rules for you to follow. We're going to do hip hop, and these are the rules that hip hop has. So I'm like, okay, so in modern, I need to be spinning like this. I need to mark. You said the marking is like you need to find one spot on the wall, and you need to spin and keep looking at that until you get to the other side of the wall. And so those were the things that I needed to do, and I ended up there. Like I couldn't do that. I got dizzy. So it was always like, Simone, do this. Simone, change this. I mean, whether that was true or not in the space, whether I was the only one being picked up, I don't know. But because you hear your own name all the time, you feel like I'm the one doing something wrong. And yet there were times and moments when they would maybe say, okay, we're just going to dance, just go free. And I would express myself greatly. Like I would just dance and move. I don't know what's moving. I don't know if I'm doing anything right, but I would just love to do that. And just, especially in my room, I think I just love to do it. I think we all start dancing in our rooms.
Even I did. So
yeah, and we love it. I mean, I used to picture a whole audience sitting there in my mirror and I'm performing for them. So I found that I kept moving studios because of that. I kept moving studios because I didn't want to be restricted to how dance is supposed to look and feel. And I did competitions, and I'm like, why are you judging me on a style? I don't understand why I have to. The only way to dance, the only space to be in, is a competition or a stage where I have to do tricks. I have to do certain movements a specific way. And I just wanted to express myself. I just want to dance. And this is why probably I was drawn to more the clubbing scene. My brothers were DJs. I come from a musical family. My uncle's a drummer. So I just wanted to feel the vibe and just enjoy myself. So that's why a dance space, wherever it was, a club, a party, I would be the first one on the dance floor. And I would just dance and clear the floor, and like compete with people and battle and stuff. And that was my vibe. So my journey through dance has been that. And then I left when I said I went overseas, and I used to work. I worked overseas for 3 years. I came back, and then I went through another process where I was like, I miss the dance space actually. Let me go back into it. So I joined another dance studio, and I started feeling weird and old, and because I'm dancing with teenagers, and at the time I was in my mid-20s, and I'm just there feeling like awkward about it, but then also moved through the awkwardness to actually get to like the instructor going, okay, actually, you know what, Simone, I want you to come up with these moves. And it was a little bit different studio space for me now, because the instructor actually saw potential, and he didn't look at me and say, you needed to do things a certain way. And if I did struggle with a move, he would assist me with that. He would help me figure it out. And if I said like, look, I've been doing this for like weeks, I can't get it or something, he would change it in a little bit differently so that it fits my body. So that
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I want to come back to this thread because what you're saying now that's so interesting is having a adequate support structure, right? In the way that someone supports you and the way that someone can sort of mitigate when you make a mistake, and how that could make or break the process, right? Sometimes it can make or break the self-esteem, but we have to take a short break. So we will be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and we are having a very fascinating conversation about dance and psychology. And still with me in studio is Simone Momplé, who is the director and founder of GODANCE, that uses dance for self-expression and wellness. She's a dancer, a filmmaker, and she's done a master's in dance and psychology. So this is really like real important stuff, guys. And Simone, before the break, you were telling us about your journey sort of and what led to you doing dance and psychology to marry sort of these two things. And we ended off by saying, you had done a tourism degree, you had gone and traveled the world as an air hostess for a while, came back, and now you're in your 20s and you want to go back to dance. And I'm just gonna say like what you said. So after tourism, you joined a dance group or dance studio. but you felt a little bit weird and old dancing a lot with teenagers, and you ended off by talking about you had, so even though this was a space of discomfort for you, because now you were older, you had a very supportive dance instructor. And I was quite fascinated by that in terms of how that affirmed you, if I might say. So tell us the rest of that.
Yeah, so I think that definitely helped in my journey. I think I need to give him props as well for that, because it was the first time that I did experience somebody who was more supportive and saw me as a person and not trying to mold me into how dance is supposed to look. And so I really enjoyed that. He gave me also quite a bit more of a leadership role to also train the younger ones now and then as well, because I was also still doing the Zumba dance fitness at the time. So I did have some level of fitness or dance experience at that time as well. And I think moving from that space, I would think I was still working through my honors at the time and still discovering what I wanted to do. And that's when I felt like my self-esteem took a dip. And I even say, like, I'm listening to you saying, like, I said I was old, but I was in my mid-20s. That's not old. Yeah. Like, you know, it was my thinking that told me that this is, you're only supposed to dance in a studio up until a certain age, and then you're supposed to be professional, and then you're supposed to. And that was not the case. And that was okay. I needed to be okay with how my journey was panning out. And also being okay with starting over, as many people are not comfortable with doing. So I think my self-esteem developed a lot through that process, and I moved through the awkwardness. I moved through my vulnerability. I understood how did I actually see myself? How are other people seeing me? And is that more important than the way I see myself or the way I feel about myself? And that is when all these questions came up for me. I think questions led me to answering them through a master's degree. And if I needed to answer questions for myself personally, maybe it was a more personal project for myself. But I also felt that I was talking a lot about these things with other people in academics, but most people will just say, yeah, but it's dance. It's just dance. Things that we do at a wedding, at a club, and we don't do those things anymore. It's kept for a specific space. And then when I was doing my master's, I brought it into academics, and I brought it into the most serious conversations. And even in my master's presentation, when I had to present my abstract and the work that I'm about to do with all these academics in the room, the first thing I did was dance. And they lost, like they were like, what is happening? Yeah. Because that's not supposed to happen in an academic space. But then I realized that
you're decolonizing, right? Decolonizing knowledge. I love it.
Exactly. I mean, that was the title of one of my abstracts that I also presented at a conference once, was decolonizing the concept of dance, but also psychology, because we don't have to also sit and counsel people on a one-on-one basis and have them talk about things. Not everybody wants to talk. Some people just want to move, and you figure things out as you move. And when I presented and danced in front of those academics, my argument for anything that they would have said was, whatever I do says more about you than it does about me. Because if you didn't like this, let's talk about that. Why don't you like dance? What's up with dance, and why are you so uncomfortable with it? Because the other aspect of dance psychology is studying what happens to you when you watch dance as well. So, you know, how do you feel when you watch a dance piece? Because that's also an exploratory way of discovering things. So very often people feel intimidated when I say, let's dance. It could be dance psychology, but you also can just watch. There's also an audience perspective on the issue, and you can watch and experience something and explore other people, but by exploring yourself as well. That's the added layer to it.
Oh my word, I love that. And there's an element here, I think, of on the Womxn Show, I think because we speak a lot about imposter syndrome, and we speak about, women, the roles, the stereotypes, and the roles and the hidden rules that persist. So even though legislation has changed, even though we're able to do a lot more, there are these layers of expectation or rules that prevent us from sort of moving forward. And so some of them are what you were talking about. There's also this, when we talk about academia, we talk about the way it's supposed to be and pushing something different into it. So I absolutely love that. Simone, before we run out of time, I do want to talk about the work that you do with young people. So all of this fits really well. You're talking about self-esteem. You're talking about an overemphasis of thought on the way that we are supposed to be, or the way that things are supposed to be. It's supposed to be done, and nowhere is this more prevalent than young people. I think preteens, in their teens, and especially now. I mean, I have a daughter. She's 9. And so obviously we've always got all these 9-year-olds around us, and it's so interesting to sort of watch what she picks up as acceptable or unacceptable. And we even at this age talking about sort of weight and what they look like and slang and, you know, the proliferation of media now that they are exposed to. You work with young people and who are going through these things. Tell us about some of the work that you do with them.
Okay, so I think firstly I'd like to talk about one girl that I was training from a young age. She was about 5-6 years old when she started with me, and she is now going to high school next year, which is crazy for me to think. And she started off as the most shy person. I think it's the best case study that I've ever had. And she was probably my guinea pig into understanding how development works and how dance would influence that space as well in her development. So she never wanted to leave her mother's lap. She was completely shy and didn't want to dance with me in the beginning because, you know, she was just too shy, even though she loved dance and would be expressive at home. And so getting her comfortable with me took a long time. And I started pushing her into more spaces of like, we're going to perform here, we're going to dance on stage, we're going to make a dance video, and teaching her how those things work behind the scenes and such. And to this point, she is the second choreographer on the project of Savior GBV, which I think we'll tap into. She was second choreographer, and she is 13. And she had to also be the leader in the space, and also had to find her feet in that space, but very confidently does it to this day. And that is all thanks to the way we have expressed ourselves together in the space with dance, the way that we have trained. I say we have trained because I haven't trained her. She also has taught me. So she's also teaching me in how I should dance or what I should do. So I've also given her that position to do that. And we don't have a dance class where I teach her something. It's a conversation. We are building something together, and you can see that that's building together. So with working with this young girl, for me also helped me to understand how other young people would work, how I would work with other people, and how to adapt my spaces with that. So what we do at Gardens, we do dance workshops. We go into different spaces. We've done universities, schools, even corporate. We've done events, expos, Women's Expo we did last year. We also did Falkenberg, had a festival open day, and we presented a short workshop there as well. And so wherever we go, we kind of adapt what we do to the space. So if it's a women's expo, for example, we're going to tap into feminism and finding your womanhood and being confident in yourself as a woman in this place, in this space, in this world. And if it's at a university, I'm going to tap into probably more confident things, self-esteem, but also people love to dance. And I mean, TikTok has made us want to dance all over. So people already do that, but like, how do you do it collaboratively? How do you also build in holistic wellness? And so what we do with holistic wellness, we also look at the social wellness and how do we engage with other people, because we also become a very secluded society, especially post-lockdown. We all just want to stay in our bubbles. So I want to also use dance and movement in a space where people can just express themselves and connect. Because in the dance workshops I've done before with university students specifically, they will connect and you will see them walking out of the dance space and talking to each other without even knowing each other's names. And now you know, and you've connected with each other on a different level. And so I've also we've done a workshop with grade 4 little ones, and that was very interesting for me as well. They are so expressive and they are so outgoing. And with them specifically, it was just looking at how can I teach them something that might be challenging, because the choreography that I did for them was very challenging. And I think if I have to teach that same one to older people, they might have difficulty getting it. And I purposefully made it difficult for them to learn, but they got it like this. And they were expressive. When they were ready to dance, they were there, they were like present, and they just presented themselves in the best version of themselves. So I really loved that. and I love engaging with. I just like to. I think with what I do is bringing the person out, the dancer out of the person, and allowing the person to just be themselves. I mean, our slogan at GODANCE is "Be you in a world of them." It doesn't matter what you are, or who you are, or how you identify. You know, just be yourself. Express yourself in the way that you love to do it. And I think working with young people specifically has been a passion of mine all my life. I've done different types of programs with people, young people. And I think my passion is there because I had a lot of issues also growing up and finding myself in this world. And so my passion for working with young people is always going to be there, but I also have a desire to help older people become young again and just let go of the way that we think. Is like so much pressure that we put on ourselves, and even the imposter syndrome you're talking about is actually a really good thing, because I've learned that having imposter syndrome means that you're doing the right thing. Because if you were doing everything and everything was just flowing and easy and always never a problem, we're never going to challenge ourselves enough to know that stepping up on this platform means I'm going to have imposter syndrome, but it also means I'm leveling up. And you unlocking a new level, like a game. You're unlocking a new level of you. And so I've identified imposter syndrome as a good thing.
I love that. And also when you unlock, Todd and I were speaking about Mario Brothers last night, and she was like so insane, because every time I speak about the old days, she's like, but why didn't you look it up? Like, why didn't you just Google it? And I was like, there was no internet, you know. So, but when you go onto the new level, you don't know what you're going to find yet, right? And so there's this process of navigating and figuring it out and then doing it differently. I want to ask you also about, there was a production that you did last year. And so the Womxn Show, was started also to deal with gender-based violence. And so a lot of that, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is interlinked with gender-based violence, also how people find themselves in this situation, the types of partners we choose, sometimes the reasons why we can't leave. I mean, if we look historically, and I think still in a lot of families, one of the reasons people don't speak about gender-based violence is because other people mustn't know about it. There's an author who actually wrote a book called What Will People Think? So that is like, the crux of the matter. We're still sort of being driven. We're being kept in this prison. You guys did this production called, and I just want to get the name of it here on my notes somewhere, Savior GBV 2022. And it was a music video, if I'm not mistaken. Tell us about how this came about.
So with the young girl that I've been training, her name is Ashton, and we usually at the end of every year or every 6 months, whenever we have the capacity, we make a dance video together. Whether previously my niece was around, and my family's now moved to Australia there, so she's dancing in Australia. But my niece and Ashton, I made a video with them as well. So whoever I'd like to work with, and especially with Ashton, I make a dance video at the end of the year, and this was going to be a dance video like that. But I watched Dorpy, and Dorpy was a very interesting film for me, because what it made me do was to examine myself, to actually ask myself, what was I doing? Very often, I think I would just scroll past the news that was being broadcast, whether it's on social media, or I turn the radio, or if I don't want to listen about these stats and these issues that are happening about gender-based violence in South Africa, and I just roll my eyes and I switch it off. But watching Dorpy, this was part of the film course that I'm a part of as well, documentary film course, and so we actually watched the film to critique the film. And where I did that, and she actually did listen to a lot of my notes, but the point of it was that when I drove home, I don't remember getting home, because I was confronted with myself. And I thought about, you have this whole platform where you are using dance for holistic wellness. Why are you leaving out, why are you not focusing on that issue as well? So the song that Ashton and I were working on was a song called Savior by Kendrick Lamar. And as I was listening to the lyrics, I think it was more about the police brutality in America. But I listened to the lyrics and I identified it with what we face in South Africa as well, because I might think that these things are not affecting me directly, but they are, because the nuances around the issue of gender-based violence affect all of us. It affects, and I realized it when my dad would tell me, be careful when you go out, lock your doors, take a stick when you walk, take the dog. You know, there's all these little nuances of the issue that we are constantly protecting ourselves from these things happening to us. So it is ingrained in our system. We do get a bit of a weird chill when, you know, footsteps are too close to us, even if we're in a mall. So we're feeling all of this tension, and we are constantly on edge in fight or flight response, where the psychology comes in. And so I felt that, how can I use dance as a tool for that? How can we use this video as an opportunity to get that message out there? So I just put a call out, and I just asked, who wants to dance, who wants to act? I said, let's make it a little bit of an acting video as well, to kind of get the message across as well, that people can get what we're doing. It's not just a dance video, dance music video, and it's not just for entertainment purposes. So we put together this, and we called people, and people showed up because of the cause. And I think because people identified with the cause in a different way, in whatever way. And I never opened up the space to say, let's talk about, why do you want to do this? Or, why is it important to you? What happened to you? And it wasn't about that space. It was just about coming together for a cause and exploring that. And I had such great assistance from so many people. I mean, if you look at the credits for that video, it's really long. People just sponsored, and people assisted where they could. So putting together the video was really a beautiful process. I think we had about 4 rehearsals with people who didn't know each other at all as well. People who actually never danced before in this type of a space. And where there were some people who did dance before, who were professional dancers, but there were some who never danced before. And if you looked at that video, you probably won't be able to tell who I'm talking about, who was not professional, because I feel I have that ability to make anybody just tap into their own dancer, and you can become that dancer. That I will portray you as the best dancer.
You level the playing field. Love it.
So that's how we came to the video, and I think we're still pushing the video. I mean, it's currently on the Fringe Festival as well, and online, so people can virtually go and watch it there, and that helped us to sponsor the next project that we want to do, because I didn't want it to just end with that, because so many people showed up, and even outside of the space, so many people saw this as an amazing project. I want to use dance, specifically dance, but we are including other artists as well. But dance, because when it comes to gender-based violence, it's a loss of control over yourself and your own body, and where we can use our body to reclaim that space and own it again. That's a beautiful experience. That's something that I would want people to have the tool to use, that to focus on their healing and express themselves again.
That was wonderful. Simone, we're out of time, and I was going to come in and ask you. I was going to say, like, we have 1 minute left, and what is your last words? But that's actually the perfect answer and way to end off this interview, because it's also about, GBV is about loss of control, and dance or physical, it's physical exertion and some sort of physical exercise is about reclaiming control of your body. And so I really want to leave it there. I love it so much. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing this journey.
Thank you so much, Linda, for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
For now, we are going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and we have been speaking about dance and psychology, and also its links to self-esteem and self-concept. Now, we've been having a great conversation about how dance can be used to boost your self-esteem. But one other thing that GODANCE and Simone Momplé have been doing is using dance to highlight gender-based violence. We are going to play a short video that they produced recently. Let's have a look.
My name is Simone Momplé. GODANCetm is a movement wellness company. We found ourselves looking at this issue of gender-based violence. I watched a film the end of last year called Dorpy. This was a film that Julia Jackie, who was a German director, produced. I was invited to one of the first screenings, and as I was part of a documentary film course at the CHRE at UWC. And so we were invited to look at this film and usually critique, that's what we do. But as I left, with this film specifically, and I mean, I've seen so many films or projects around gender-based violence, none of them stuck with me like this one did, because the film didn't have an ending. Because it didn't end. So what the story is about the femicide issues that was happening in DSTV specifically. I mean, we know of the extremes that have been happening there over the years. So she was specifically following this lady called Lana, who has a safe house in DSTV, and looking at the work that she's been doing and looking at how government is helping or not helping. And so now the film is actually doing well overseas. They're doing quite a few screenings overseas, and hopefully when it comes here, you will all be there for the screening as well. But anyway, after that film, it kind of left me feeling this hopelessness, feeling like, what am I even doing? Because it's so easy for us to scroll past something, switch the news off after somebody talks to you about what they faced. You can walk away and go and make coffee or whatever you do. But yeah, so we kind of found I found that this issue actually does affect people who think it doesn't affect them. Because very often we have to, thank you so much, felt my struggles. Well, very often we don't realize the nuances around the issue of gender-based violence. Somebody telling you, don't go there, think about this, wear this. And I mean, I've lived like that all my life, and I always thought it was absolutely normal. I've also traveled the world, and it's not normal. So, you know, being the only girl as well, and my dad always telling me all these types of things of what I should and shouldn't do when I go out. So I found this is actually irritating. It's actually really annoying. So we use this specific issue of gender-based violence to focus on our first project, which is Save TV. Ashton, who danced with us over here, has been dancing with me for the past, I don't know how many years, 5, 6 years. She was very tiny and never wanted to dance in the beginning, but look at her today, she's absolutely amazing. So yeah, I mean, basically we're looking at Ashton, just a quick brief on that. I mean, I have to praise her because the come up has been absolutely amazing. She's her own person today. She's confident. She knows how to navigate the world, just kind of through working with GODANCetm and performing with us quite a few times. I think you also saw her perform quite a few years ago. She's grown so much at a film screening before as well. So, Save Your GBV, we basically always make a video at the end of every year. And when we made this video, just after I watched the film, and I started thinking for a few days, what can I do about this? What can I do about the issue? And then I realized I have a company that focuses on dance and movement. I've also experienced some people who have danced with me who have had breakthroughs. Now, firstly, when you dance, nobody talks about what happens when you're dancing in that space. You come and you move and you dance and you perform and you leave, you process, you come back, and then you talk to me if people want to talk about it. So anyway, dance is kind of that non-verbal space. You don't have to talk about what's happening with you, but you process things. So I had that experience of somebody who I was working with for a long time through dance. I asked her to freestyle for me. Very easily, she could copy me. She could do exactly what I was doing if I danced, and she was doing well. She's like, I want to learn more about dance. I said, cool, freestyle. Freestyle is usually put the music on and you just dance and move. She completely froze in that moment and ran out of the room crying. And I was like, oh, okay, I pushed it too hard, what happened? But she couldn't speak. Only a few weeks later, eventually, she came to me and she said, I've actually been in an abusive relationship, husband that she had. She had quite a really, really bad experiences. Even her family didn't want her to leave that marriage, even though they knew how bad it was. So she experienced that for so many years that she never had control of her own body. And when I asked her to freestyle, I was asking her to take control. And so when I realized that, I found, okay, firstly remembering that experience and so many that I don't know about, finding that what I do with dance and movement and psychology, I can do something for the assistance of people. So this is how we kind of came to say, this is how we stumbled upon the project Savior GBV. So we started off with this project, which was Savior GBV 2022. You can find it on my YouTube channel, Simone Momplé. And, or you can just Google Savior GBV. You can please watch it, like, share, and subscribe. We want to get our views up on this thing. The whole point of this project specifically, and what we are wanting to still do, is looking at how we can use dance, but also the creative arts, performance, everything around filming. We have people filming here for us today. So that's also a way of using your creativity for a good deed, for doing something about an issue as well. This is where you get in touch with us. You can scan the QR code and you can find everything about us online. Thank you.
Well done.
That was a short video about GODANCe's today's awareness around gender-based violence. And that brings us to the end of our hour together. We've had a great conversation, but I think one thing to leave you with is that most of our self-esteem issues comes from worrying about what other people think of us. But the most important thing is what you think of yourself. That brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lenina Rasool. Goodbye.